annoying because it's like collective idiocy. Like we've forgotten what happened just 50, 60 years ago, and are asking homeowners to shoulder this kind of burden. This is not, if you're going to give a company a limited monopoly in an area, it's their responsibility to service the customers, is my opinion on it.
Yeah, they make the argument that the burdensome, that they've already built the infrastructure, and that's why new services that would use it should not be allowed to compete with them. But that completely flies in the face of this argument, which is it's not our business to build the infrastructure. So.
It's like, okay, so there's a real quick fix for this, and that is anywhere that there's a city that has a cable company that's playing these kind of shenanigans, as citizenry, we should say, all right, anywhere in this municipal region or wherever they're granted a monopoly and they're not servicing the customers, a competing company can form and compete. You can roll out as much as you want. You lose your limited monopoly rights in that area. The whole area, not just the people that you're not serving, the entire area.
I would take that a step further and say the fix is a free market. There ain't no monopoly.
Well, the argument against a free monopoly is, if it was a completely free market, there would be redundant infrastructure. And in the 96 Telecommunications Act, the solution there was to separate the infrastructure from the services on it. And so that would be a good free market solution if we take that step. But we tried that, and companies agreed with that initially and then fought it tooth and nail. So I don't know. But it would be nice if we decoupled the infrastructure from the service providers. Then we would have real competition again. And that would be better for AT&T anyway, because AT&T's basically let their infrastructure go to the point that it's basically worthless. You're going to have to replace all that copper with fiber, and the copper's just going to rot away. The copper has rotted away. So, I don't know. It's just, we like these kind of stories because it's always a mess. Raspberry Pi. Raspberry Pi is a single board embedded computer. Well, Asus has got a Raspberry Pi competitor. What? It doesn't even make any sense. It's $68 instead of $35, so it's quite a bit more expensive. However, it's also quite a bit faster, so hopefully I can get my hands on one of these. This is kind of exciting.
What it doesn't have is years and years of libraries and parts, and stuff. So it's going to take time to see if anybody actually cares enough to support it, build on it. I mean, the Raspberry Pi, really the success of it was the community and the open source, and everybody took to it, and there's all these amazing libraries and stuff. You can do whatever you want with it, and it's already been done in almost every scenario.
Yeah.
So this doesn't have that.
If Asus goes above and beyond the call of duty to make sure that all of the sketches and example programs and things like that would work on a Raspberry Pi work on their device, and then some, then they'll probably be onto something. But I want to reserve judgment until I get my hands on one and play with it. It is really exciting to see more and more companies building Raspberry Pi type devices for tinkerers and makers and DIY people. And it's not, even Asus this time around in the previous generation are supporting, 3D printable components for their motherboards. So it's kind of neat, kind of interesting, something to keep an eye on.
So the rise of the robots. 2017 is the year of the robot. We had several AI stories this week. One of this, which was the crash testing from the Tesla autopilot system. They have been cleared of any wrongdoing. There was user error, and they've been given pretty much the best grade they could have expected on their whole autopilot system from the national standards.
Yeah, 40% reduction. The National Highway, the National Highway Standardization Organization, looked at the Tesla crash that was fatal. There was a fatality, and they said, "Wow, not only is this software really good, on average, it's reducing collisions by 40%." And Musk was sort of gone on record and saying, it's like, oh, we can do better than that with more and improved software, so please don't shut us down. So Tesla's avoided a recall here and actually gotten praise out of the transportation safety. Actually, in the whole report, I couldn't find anything negative at all, except for one sentence that was like, well, Tesla should probably have some more warnings that the car is not going to completely drive itself.
Yeah. And that was pretty much the finding, I think, was the guy who died was really paying zero attention to what was going on around. I mean, he was totally trusting that autopilot system. That was the problem.
Oops.
But everybody, every time we talk about one of these stories, we get a couple of comments like, I'm never going to stop driving my own car. It's never going to happen. It is going to happen. And this is a big step toward you are not going to be able to drive your own car unless you are super rich or politically connected. And it's happening very rapidly.
Well, the ink wasn't even dry on that report from the Transportation Safety Board when Tesla started rolling out new updates to the autopilot system, almost like they were waiting to be cleared of any kind of wrongdoing. And so there's a new autopilot upgrade that's going to be even more autonomous. So
Yeah,
this is exciting.
and it's kind of an ideal situation for them because they have now, like all these other autonomous car companies, they're trying to get like, can we test here? Can we do the red tape? Tesla's got a fleet of data out there already testing this thing.
Yeah.
And they can just run out these cumulative updates. Hopefully they're not like Windows updates.
Yeah.
Because that would be a lot.
We've got a T-shirt for that.
There'd be a lot of dead people. I'm freezing to death. I need to use the heater. We'll just wait. There's going to be another 15
Don't turn
minutes.
off your car. Stand by.
But yeah, they've got constant data. They've got testers who are actually already paid testing. And
This kind of ties in with the OnStar thing, though, because Tesla's network is super connected. If Musk wanted to turn evil, he could push out a firmware tomorrow that would brick the entire fleet of Teslas. Literally brick every Tesla that's out there because they're all connected.
and the tracking implications are not even implications. They know where you are.
Yeah.
Because not only do they know where you are, but they've got 1 million data points coming back from the telemetry of that car. Traffic accident liability is going to become a matter of
Data.
just look at the data.
Yeah.
Now, the scary part about that is how that could be corrupted by somebody who has access to the data or has enough power to get incorrect data to be reported.
Yeah, that's going to happen. Well, it may not necessarily happen from powerful people to do something wrong. I mean, there could be a whole new generation of hackers who come up with little programs and things that feed all of the things gathering data false information so as to make themselves invisible or blame somebody else.
Now, I definitely could see a new type of product. Of course, we've already got the car telemetry, Bluetooth adapters and stuff like that. But for the Tesla, almost like you're going to need a dash cam to prove things, you're going to need to be logging your own data. So you're going to have like, a little SSD drive somewhere in the car on Bluetooth that's just constantly logging all the telemetry from your car.
Guaranteed to be secure.
Right.
The Libra boot of car telemetry, if you will.
And some sort of shell that is crash proof, like a black box.
Oh, Lord. It's just... AI is coming, and robots in the general sense, not robots as in the anthropomorphic, bipedal things that walk around, are coming for everything, and we are, the innovation is accelerating rapidly. And so this is kind of a generic article on 6 areas of AI and machine learning to watch closely. This comes from a venture capitalist, so it's a unique point of view. From his point of view, you can definitely tell that his work has been in a background of like sponsoring it and being sort of plugged into the science. And so it's not really an academic background, it's more on the venture capital side. And so that's why I sort of thought this article was interesting. We're not going to go too much into it, into the specifics. This is more just further reading. If you're interested in that, the links and the timestamps and stuff should be in the description. But it's kind of a lead-in for our next story, which is, could a neuroscientist understand a microprocessor? And there's actually a whole set of stories on this because they looked at Donkey Kong among, the ancient like arcade system, Donkey Kong. They looked at that and said, can neuroscience describe what's happening in Donkey Kong? So this is a little bit like, can computer science explain what's happening inside the brain of a seahorse, or something like that, I guess, is sort of the analog that they're going for. And the results were kind of hilarious.
Yeah, the answer is no. Emphatically, they couldn't even get close to telling what was going on in Donkey Kong, what's the size of that ROM?
It's tiny. It's just really tiny.
If you think about how small those NES ROMs were, that's even smaller.
Yeah.
Really, really small amount of memory here. But when they applied the neuroscience standards, and they tried several different ways of looking at it that are analogous to the ways they look at the human brain, they couldn't figure out anything about it. Which you have to wonder, is it a statement on how complex this system is, which we know it's not that super complex, or is this just a condemnation of neuroscience?
Well, that's when you guys see a lot of stories about artificial intelligence and machine learning and how all that works, a lot of the time the journalists sort of assume that the mechanism there is exactly identical to what's happening, in a fatty brain, and just in a human brain, or in brains as they've evolved, and that's so far from what's happening. It is. We said this before, but it's more like the Mechanical Turk, and the Mechanical Turk was like a chess-playing automaton from a long time ago. But this software that we're developing, that computer scientists are developing, that Google is developing, really is fundamentally different. And even if it looks like it's intelligent, and even if it looks like something amazing is going to happen, consciousness is just not going to fall out of this. There's just no way that consciousness is going to fall out of this. At least consciousness as a result of it being a duplicate or analog to the mechanism of a biological brain. And so, for example, from the Donkey Kong study, the neurologists were looking at it, and they were like, this is critically important. This one particular region of memory is critically important to the normal operation of the game. And it actually had nothing to do with the operation of the game. It was part of the boot up sequence. And so, is it critically important? Well, yeah, kinda. But is it critically important to the normal operation of the game? No. Once the game is booted up, that part of the memory is not even used anymore. So if the game is running and you modify that region of memory, it was fine. But if you modify that region and you have to reboot the thing, it's not gonna reboot. It's gonna get stuck. It's never gonna come back to life again. And so, is that like somebody entering a coma? No. Somebody in the audience just cringed. But this is sort of the level of understanding of what's happening in the brain that we have. All we can do is look at the inputs and look at the outputs. The AI that does things like play Mario Brothers, it has no concept of that it's playing a game, and that the stuff that it learns in the easier levels will translate to the harder levels. It just doesn't work the same way. It is a fundamentally different science. And so you read these articles and you read about the different types of AI, and you'll begin to understand that artificial intelligence, the word intelligence there, really means something completely different than intelligence when talking about people.
It's important to study, but it's more important that the general public understands it, because like we were talking about earlier with the Giuliani thing, the people who are going to be making decisions about how to deal with artificial intelligence and the crazy changes it's going to have on society, think of it probably more in terms of Terminator. They don't understand these limitations or the fundamental way that AI works, and that it isn't ever going to replace people on that level. But the fear mongering will paint it in that light.
One of my favorite quotes from this reading material is one of the neuroscientists said that human beings are exceptionally good at two different things: anthropomorphizing things and dehumanizing things. And all too often, history is littered with as much bloodshed and violence as it is, because we human beings are so easily capable of dehumanizing other human beings. And at the same time, we're also just as capable of anthropomorphizing, a teapot. And that is really a dangerous, somebody that is in charge and in control of these types of sciences should be at least cognizant of that. And so we share this information with you. Go forth and read and try to understand.
There's a great story about the soldiers using mind-sweeping robots. They developed a real affection for these robots and were less and less willing to send them out to possibly be blown up. And the Army was trying to figure out ways to get around that. It's like, can we make them more ugly? How do we make these soldiers not fall in love with their minesweepers?
That's the future. Well, there are some AI researchers that are trying to make the AI systems that see the world more like humans do. And so this cog sketch, and this talks about this. This is a paper from a university, so take that with a grain of salt. Like the university's Northwestern EDU's news service. But this particular AI is scoring in the 75th percentile on standardized tests.
And this is a test that had no text. This is pure visual. And it's a real test that you can take that, it doesn't have any text. But this reminds me of that Google sketch thing. And that was really good at identifying sketches, the same kind of thing. But here they're not just identifying the visual things, but they're doing logic with them and figuring things out better than humans can.
And we've also included sort of a frequently asked questions. This Reddit AMA, I was sort of trying to find good supplemental reading material for you guys. And this AMA is not terrible. It's a sort of a computer science, Q&A that you might come up with talking about the artificial intelligence and the stuff that goes into that. But that's really just more background reading or more if you're interested in that kind of thing. Maybe we should do a special on machine learning and artificial intelligence and the state of the art. Maybe we could get some PhDs to come on. I don't know. It's a possibility. We had a lot of fun with that a long time ago. Apple is suing Qualcomm for roughly $1 billion over royalties.
Oh, Apple. They do love to sue people, don't they? In this situation, they're saying that Qualcomm is sort of claiming copyrights that they shouldn't be able to claim, overcharging for patents that they weren't the sole proprietor of, and they're saying, you've been charging us all this money for too long, we want it back.
Yeah. So this is a little bit of a role reversal. Instead of Apple suing companies for quote-unquote infringing on their IP, they're suing Qualcomm for them paying royalties on IP that is dubious at best. And so this is really delightful, because if you really deconstruct this down to down to the nth degree, if Samsung had paid royalties on Apple for the design aesthetic and rounded corners, would Samsung be able to sue Apple because you can't actually patent rounded corners in some of those design elements?
Yeah, you gotta wonder if this is a little short-sighted, because you can easily see a future where this case is cited in a suit against Apple, because they do this very same thing. They patent everything, and they try to use that as a bludgeon.
There's actually a lot going on with this story, because the FTC here in the U.S. is also investigating Qualcomm. There was some stuff going on in Korea with this. So there's really a lot more to this story than meets the eye. Apple is paying more in royalties than other companies that are licensing similar sort of... The technology is really like a type of standards technology. They're saying, well, okay, yeah, we owe royalties on these patented technologies, but this is the industry standard at this point. We should not have royalties this egregious, and Apple is paying more royalties than other people. So this is going to be an ongoing story, I think, that we're going to follow. It's going to be interesting to see how this shakes out. But the delightful irony.
Yeah, it will be funny if the ultimate case for the patent system being broken and needing to be more open, if that was spearheaded by an Apple lawsuit, that would just be such delicious irony. I'm sure somebody would get fired for that.
But why did we open this? Why did we open Pandora's box? Yeah, I don't understand. So the reality is, looking at like IBM and Microsoft have been in battles like this before in the past that I can kind of recall, and really Microsoft and IBM treated their patent portfolios almost like weapons of mass destruction. They've got mutually assured destruction if either one of them gets into litigation with the other one. And so there were these just really broad patent cross-licensing deals between Microsoft and IBM, sort of the juggernauts of the industry, for technology and that kind of thing. And I almost think that maybe it's a little bit like that with like Qualcomm and Samsung. Now, Apple's patent portfolio around the technology is just not as extensive as a company like Qualcomm. So I think that they might be picking a fight with an 800-pound gorilla. But we may be wrong about that. We'll see.
Yeah, doing so at a time when more and more competitors could take their spot to pick up those orders. It's like, well, all of a sudden maybe we don't need you as much.
Yeah, Apple's technology on the hardware side is basically obsolete. So, even their new stuff is basically obsolete before it's even out the gate. So I don't know. It's really, we'll see. The Nintendo Mini NES. There's an Easter egg for hackers.
Yeah, if you try to, of course, shortly after this thing came out, people figured out how to add their own ROMs, because this literally is just a little emulator. They took this thing that they've been suing people over for years, and they said, we can package that and sell it.
Yeah, and Nintendo.
So they left a little Easter egg for anybody who gets into that portion of it and tries to do their own ROMs, and it's kind of silly.
I think the exact quote is, "This is the Hanafuda captain speaking, launching emulation in 3, 2, 1. Many efforts, tears, and countless hours have been put into this jewel, so please keep this place tidied up and don't break anything. Cheers, the Hanafuda captain."
Yeah, countless hours of the Nesticle team, which is the emulator, if you don't know that. It's funny. it's hard to feel bad for Nintendo here because they have this huge backlog of games and they really, really stick it to you. And the thing about it is, some people have bought these games probably 5 times at this point. They had the Wii emulator, and then they had, I think, the
Game Boy Advance.
They had
Or
the
game 3DS.
did that do?
Yeah,
all
3DS.
games?
Yeah.
The Wii U, I think, had a different online store, and now this new thing. Did you see the monthly subscription plan? You get they've got like their Xbox Gold type thing. You get 1 game per month, but at the end of the month, you don't have it anymore. A classic ROM game, you know. So it is. They're really, really sticking it to their customers, so it's hard to feel bad for them. People steal their stuff.
Nintendo, why you gotta do this? Why?
Money.
There's so much money. They're the Disney of ROM games, I guess, or video game history, whatever. I don't know.
So we talked about the robots, and the robots are coming, but a Harvard team has gone the other direction. They're building an exoskeleton. But it's not like the the alien loader big exoskeleton. This is a soft, sort of non-intrusive wearable exoskeleton that doesn't look like a robot.
The press photo here really conjured pictures. I don't remember what novel it was from, but it was the way that the scene was described was really poignant. It was like the exoskeletons got to the point where they were so automated that if a human being happened to die while they were on the workforce, the exoskeleton would just keep on working. And it was just like, so you would go in a factory and there would just be like a corpse and an exoskeleton, and the exoskeleton was just doing whatever was needed, and there was just a corpse being ground up inside the exoskeleton.
Now this one is pretty subtle in the way that it works. It's not doing anything for you necessarily. It's just supporting. It's sort of measuring where your joints are doing the most work and supporting them with a system of pulleys and this new age fabric. And you get like 24% more efficiency, fewer calories burned, less energy spent. You can work longer, you can move faster. And 24% is not huge, but this is still in development. So we could conceivably have a suit that you wear that just makes everything a little bit easier, which is interesting.
This might be good for physical therapy, or just as you age, somebody that's geriatric or whatever. And this is also much more inviting than sort of a rigid exoskeleton where it's like your range of motion is going to be limited. It looks like this would be much less obtrusive.
Yeah, and if you drop the power out of this thing, it doesn't really drag you down. Like, that's sort of the idea behind a lot of those, like in Fallout.
The power suit.
If you don't have the power core, you're going nowhere. But in this one, if you get it wet and it dies, you can still walk around.
Well, you heard it here first. The death of solar power in America. Solar power costs are down 25% in 5 months. There's no reason that the cost of solar will ever increase again. So, of course, we're abandoning solar.
This is interesting in terms of, it goes both ways. Because it's like, oh, solar's getting cheap. Maybe I'm getting into solar. But at the same time, it's never going to be this price again. It's only going to go down. Why don't I wait till it's really cheap? Get in on that.
It's just so easy to make photovoltaic cells, and the efficiency's never been higher. I mean, you can basically print them at this point. So there's this nice graph of the price, and it's spiked, and it's like, okay, now it's just sort of going down. And this spike is largely because it finally crossed the threshold and stayed there of alternative forms of electricity. Solar's gotten so cheap that a lot of regional power plants are looking at supplementing their delivery systems, natural gas, coal, whatever, with solar, which is exciting.
Yeah, there's going to be a threshold of price, and once it gets below that, there's no reason other than just not having the materials enough on the earth to blanket everything in solar.
Yeah.
So I could definitely see a future where literally every empty piece of roof, car, whatever is going to be covered with solar. Doesn't make sense not to.
The problem that still faces solar is energy storage during times of surplus. Like the sun's out and it's shining and you got extra, abundant electricity. What do you store it in? I mean, is it going to be batteries from Musk's, super factory, gigafactory, whatever? Or is it going to be something else? Well, it might be in molten silicon.
Now we know from the environmental studies on the Tesla batteries it is not realistic for everybody in the world to have a Tesla car. There's just simply not enough of the raw materials, and there never will be.
No.
It's if we dug up every inch of the earth, there's not going to be enough. But silicon, literally everywhere.
Yeah. So this might be a good long-term energy storage medium. You know, just it's very energy dense molten silicon, and so the solar cells could keep the silicon molten or heat up more silicon so that it is molten. And then when we need energy back out of that, the molten silicon could be used for anything from, you know, advanced whatevers or just boil water, because it turns out boiling water is still a really efficient way to generate electricity.
Now they're using something called, was it thermovoltaic cells?
Yeah, thermovoltaic cells.
Which is a somewhat new thing where you are taking heat and turning it directly into electricity, which is a cool thing.
I have my doubts about that part of the technology, but you know, as a backup, if nothing else, the heat will work for steam, but it is really exciting for them to be able to take the heat and convert it directly to electricity.
As we entered into this brave new world of renewable energies, another thing that we might be able to get rid of, animals. We have lab-grown meat. Now, this is not new, but previous lab-grown meat was found to be pretty disgusting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so now they've done they've made a meatball. This was beef. And this, the process is they extract cells from a cow and they grow them in the lab. They made this meatball and it actually was a good tasting meatball.
Now this is different from the earlier generations where they just straight up grew muscle tissue. This actually has fatty components and other chemical components, other chemical stuff that you would find in normal muscle tissue. So not just cells of muscle type, but you also get, you know, the little fibrous networks inside muscle and fatty, whatever. And so it turned into a good tasting meatball, supposedly.
They've dubbed this clean meat. That's a hell of a marketing name.
So I want to hear from the vegans and the vegetarians in the audience. Would you eat this kind of meat?
It does. I mean, it solves every argument that you could have. I mean, yeah, well, I guess the animals are in a little bit of discomfort when you extract their cells, but
it's not. You can do that without killing them.
Yeah.
I mean, eventually it'll get to a point where we can get their discarded cells out of their poop.
we're making clean meat from shit. Oh, what a world. Now, of course, this costs more than regular meat still. It'll be a while before it's, if it's ever economically affordable to do this kind of thing. But that's an interesting future where you don't have to worry about, you know, keeping these huge swaths of land that only cows can use. Where you need just a couple of good, real high quality cows. They could live a life of luxury and you just grow their meat in the lab.
Did you see the thing about feeding cows seaweed makes them stop farting, and so cow fart methane stops becoming a thing?
Huh.
So that might be a thing too. Cow is pretty tasty. It's going to be a long time before I give up cow.
But lab cow.
I would really like to try lab cow.
Yeah,
that would be an interesting thing.
They should start a restaurant, like a really high-end restaurant.
That only serves lab-grown steaks.
Yeah, so you could, like, vegans could go there and know what they're missing.
Well, in other news, CBS and Paramount have settled their lawsuit over the Star Trek fan film Axanar. So this is really exciting news. I like the artwork here too.
Yeah, it's interesting the minutia that came under argument here. It was literally like the shape of the ears, which they have patents on the shape of the ears. That's hilarious. That was a good idea, whoever did it. And, you know, just little things about the Star Trek universe which they own, which they will not let somebody else use.
Wow. Not even licensed. I mean, they offered to license it, just not for an exorbitant amount of money, but then they would be associated with the project. I really tried, for you Trekkies in the audience, I really tried to come up with some sort of joke, and it was like an accord has been reached on both sides of the case, something Kittimer Accords, but I couldn't come up with anything.
But the good news is, well, I guess it's good news. This is still,
it's on.
They're going to do it.
They're going to do it.
It's just not, there's going to be enough difference that you're going to be like, wait a minute, this isn't Star Trek. And that's what they want.
And this is also that, you know, J.J. Abrams even intervened here to be like, look, this is really dumb. We should support fan films and fan funding. And CBS has supported fan films. They even came out with a guide that was like, you know, if you're going to do fan stuff, follow this guide. And I think what they're asking of the Axanar people goes a little bit beyond the guide that they previously published, which I think was a point of contention in the lawsuit. But it's nice that this is proceeding.
The timeline here also seems like CBS didn't get interested until that $1 million Kickstarter.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, their legal arguments were that the dude was profiting, and so they submitted fast and loose financials that where it wasn't clear if the guy was profiting. And then the guy came up with full financials from a CPA, like a licensed CPA firm, that showed that the guy that is a fan of this had invested like $200,000 of his own money. And CBS was like, whoa, we need to have that be in the court case. So I don't know that that would have really mattered in the end, just the way that American copyright law was. I think the film was on shaky ground from day one. But it is nice that they're going to go through with it, and it is nice that this will finally be published. So hopefully all that fan goodwill will lead to good fruition.
And as we enter into a phase where you can almost, like, the digital representation of humans is getting to the point where you're not going to be able to tell a real actor from digitized actor. And they've got, what was the name of that thing where you can make anybody from YouTube clips say whatever you want?
Oh yeah, we covered that.
I can't remember the name of it, but it's an amazing technology. Plus, you know, with CGI where it is, we're going to get into a phase where small groups like this can make amazing looking films. And intellectual property, this is probably going to be a big case that gets cited in terms of whether or not you're allowed to use existing intellectual property in a project like that.
Well, it would have been, except that now it's not going to go to trial. So,
Yeah, well, but they'll say, yeah, look what CBS did.
Look at how much
You're going to lose.
They were trying to ruin all these nerds' day. It's just, I don't understand. That's pretty much it for the news this week. If you guys see anything exciting, be sure to check it out. If you guys have any exciting ideas for stuff that we should do on a T-shirt, let us know. There's a forum thread for that. So,
Yeah, it was a slow week this week, and for the life of us, we can't figure out where all that news coverage went.
I don't know. It's just crazy.
It's like the whole world just was following some story that we didn't hear about.
I don't know. It's like they're probably preoccupied with nonsense. I don't really know.
Seems likely.
See you guys.
See ya.
Still working on it. Continue to defend. Location reached. Drop me in and defend our position. Area completed. Move on. Terminal set. Upload me and prepare to defend. This will take a moment. Still working on it. Continue to defend. Location reached. Drop me in and defend our position. I'm in, Tenno. This will take a moment.
There it is. Right, for synthesis. Tame this creature so you may perform the synthesis I require.
Still working on it. Continue to defend. The odds were against us, Tenno, but we did it. Mission complete. Multiple targets ahead. Mission complete. Excellent work, Tenno.